Welcome everyone to another recording of Two Geeks and a Marketing Podcast. We are back for more news, tech, content and wisdom from the world of marketing. And my co-host is a digital marketing veteran. He's a speaker, trainer and advisor with nearly 3 decades of experience who enjoys revealing visual storytelling techniques to help you build better online campaigns faster. I give you Monsieur Pascal Fintoni.
Well, thank you for the introduction. I just heard from my co-host, a marketing speaker and consultant who spent his whole career helping his customers keep their marketing simple but effective. He's the author of 𝗧𝗵𝗲 Marketing Plans and the creator of the Roger video series. I give you Mr. Roger Edwards.
Oh, Pascal, it's great to be back. This is episode 133.
I know.
And, in the world that we live in at the moment, things seem to be going worse from day to day. They're now talking about a global pandemic of something called hantavirus. And, of course, this podcast was born in the COVID pandemic. Nearly 6 years ago now since we did the first episode of Two Geeks and a Marketing Podcast. And here we are for episode 133. And as always, we've got in the news, we've got content spotlights. We're going to have a look back in history, talk about some marketing tech and apps. And of course, one of my favorite parts of the show is always film marketing. And Pascal, you've chosen the film today. Tell us what it is.
I have indeed. I've chosen a movie written by the talented duo that is Nick Frost and Simon Pegg, but not Shaun of the Dead, not Hot Fuzz. I'm talking about the 2011 movie Paul.
Now I'm actually not that familiar with this film. In fact, I don't think I've seen it all the way through. I've seen some of the some clips and stuff, Pascal. So this is going to be interesting. I'm a massive fan of Simon Pegg, etc. And Shaun of the Dead is obviously an absolute classic. So it'll be interesting to see what you've got in store for us when we talk about Paul and, of course, how they marketed slightly. It's also, is it a spoof? I guess we'll have to wait for the film marketing section. So shall we start, as we always do, with In the News?
And we start with Greggs, who was appointed on the beach Chief Customer Officer Zoe Harris as Customer and Marketing Director in May of this year, taking over from Hannah Squirrell.
Meta is set to become the world's largest digital ad business and is forecast to exceed Google for the first time, with automation and AI tools driving increased advertiser spend, according to new data.
While marketing recruitment is showing signs of recovery, but 24% of leaders still plan to cut, according to data from 𝗖𝗶𝗴 Bellwether.
Marks & Spencer is revamping its Sparks loyalty program with pounds not points approach designed to allow customers to spend rewards on what they want when they want.
And some stats for you. Messaging, that includes text messages and emails, is the most widely used communication channels in the UK, with 89% of Brits using it regularly. More precisely, Gen X and Gen Z are more likely to use messaging, 91%, millennials 90%, and baby boomers 84%.
UK companies revised marketing budgets up to their highest level in almost 2 years, despite recent geopolitical tensions, including, of course, the conflict in the Middle East, according to the latest 𝗖𝗶𝗴 Bellwether report.
Netflix is stepping up its push into advertising as a key driver of future growth. That's following its decision not to pursue a deal with Warner Brothers Discovery. It expects to generate $3 billion in ad revenue this year, double 25 levels.
Sainsbury's hails sales growth after a $1.3 billion value investment. Claiming to lead the industry on personalised value, Sainsbury's attributes this $1.3 billion 5-year price push for delivering sales growth. Now, there is a definite trend in these news items today on two things. First of all, advertising, and a couple of mentions for personalisation, both of which you have to be incredibly careful with, Pascal, I think. Personalisation is okay, but it requires a lot of data. And I think we're in that sort of environment now where people are very conscious that their phone is listening to them. And you see lots of either videos or instruction websites on how to turn off all of these features on phones. And I imagine it's the same with Android as well. And it's all very well Netflix saying it's stepping up its push into advertising. But, I feel we're almost at this point now where advertising is starting to become too intrusive again. There's just more and more of it, whether it's on YouTube, whether it's on Netflix, whether it's on Amazon. And yes, you can pay, of course, if you want to bypass the ads completely. But even now, some of the paid tiers have advertising in there as well. I mean, I subscribe to Amazon Prime, but I'm still subject to about 3 minutes of adverts before watching a film. Do you think we're at the tipping point for advertising and personalization?
I think we were a long time ago. I'm very, very surprised, by this news. It's almost like, because times are difficult and people want to get, quicker results from their marketing efforts, they fall into advertising, and that there are so many other avenues to explore. I mean, if you think, for example, the news you read out about Meta becoming the world's largest digital ad business, exceeding Google for the first time, and they're suggesting, well, it's because automation and AI tools. That's not that. It's because actually Meta has such precise intelligence about us that their targeting is a lot better than Google's, and therefore it's attracted the interest of advertisers, good, bad, and ugly. So I think you're right. Our personal information, the many kind of data sets that makes us who we are and are being utilized, and there's almost no respite. It feels to me almost as though some brands are having a meeting and they're asking the question, where else can we advertise, as opposed to can we make the current advertising better? It's really, really quite strange what's happening at the moment.
When we watched Blade Runner for the first time back in whenever it was 1982, and you had these great big digital adverts calling you out personally, we're there, aren't we? It's just really, really quite scary. One of the other ones that drew my attention today was the Marks and Spencer revamping its loyalty program. Now, I have to admit, as you would expect, what attracted me by this headline was the word Sparks, because of course I associate Sparks with one of my favourite groups, who we are going to see again in just over a month's time in concert in Glasgow. But of course, for a long period of time, Marks and Spencer's was known by the affectionate nickname of Marks and Sparks, wasn't it? And of course, that's where the name Sparks comes from in terms of their loyalty program. I'm not sure whether I actually hear people saying Marks and Sparks now as much as perhaps they used to.
Well, in my neck of the woods, sorry, I hear people say Marxes. That's what they say.
Yeah. Yeah, but it was always, when I was growing up, it was always Marks and Sparks. But, I mean, again, Pascal, marketing has got to clearly identify and describe what it's trying to do. And when I read that, it's okay saying it's revamping its loyalty program with a pounds, not points approach designed to allow customers to spend rewards on what they want, when they want. Well, that sounds like the sort of thing a loyalty program should do anyway, isn't it? I mean, what is unique about that?
Well, actually, it's interesting because I recently had to fend for myself and go shopping. And it's been a long time since I've been food shopping. I was doing my bit. And I went to Morrison's and I was walking around. I realized that unless you had the loyalty card, everything was a bit more expensive. So sure enough, I did download the loyalty app. But actually, I learned that you had to spend an absolute fortune to be able to even claim, frankly, a few pounds. It's just not worth it. It wasn't worth the hassle of me, and I can think. So I think what we have here, maybe the loyalty programs, we don't realize that, have been kind of hijacked and manipulated, and eventually they don't do what they set out to do. And maybe Marks and Sparks or Marxists thinking, you know what, let's go back to core principles of the more you spend, the more you can kind of get back. And we're not going to put rules in place. We're not going to put ceilings. We're not going to put thresholds and so on. And bear in mind what you described about the world we live in today. I think earning back pounds, not points, I think it's a very, very clever message.
Yeah,
but ultimately, Marxist was guilty of the over-engineering of their loyalty program, and maybe they just being the first mover on that one.
So maybe they're just going back to basics and keeping it
Mm,
simple, which is one of
that's
the
fun.
things, of course, that I have been saying for many, many years. I was also interested by this issue of text messages. And of course, I'm a Gen X person, and we hear a hell of a lot about Gen Z and boomers, but we very rarely hear about Gen X. But so I was really pleased to see that Gen X is one of the most prolific users of messaging technology. But the one I
Mm,
wanted to finish with on Pascal is marketing recruitment and marketing budgets. Now, the good news, of course, is that we are seeing marketing budgets on the up. However, we are seeing people saying, well, we may have to cut some of our people as well. Now, is that as a result of them replacing real people with AI? Possibly. I know from personal experience with trying to get sponsorship for the big conference program that I work with. It is increasingly hard to get marketing departments to spend budget now. Whether those budgets are increasing slightly or not, the hoops you've got to jump through to get the spend allocated, to me, feels harder and more stringent than it's ever been.
no, I would agree, and it's just kind of fascinating because I suppose we this is a marketing podcast with a healthy amount of popular culture and storytelling, but I wonder what other business functions are having cuts. Because to me, it feels a lot like as soon as times are difficult, let's cut training and marketing. That's been kind of my perception, but I wonder whether it's an unfair one and other departments and functions in the business get the cuts. But I got a feeling you don't hear about finance being cut. You don't hear about operations and logistics. All those departments that seem to be essential engine of businesses. So yeah, that's interesting. If I may, very very quickly to say that when I read the news about Greg's appointing a customer and marketing director, I kind of like that title because I've spoken about marketing being kind of sliced and diced as well by non-marketers into literally becoming a department for pretty pictures, as I've heard somebody say in a board meeting once, very very offensive. And I like the idea of aligning customer experience and marketing together.
And what is it I have always said, Pascal? Marketing is a deep, almost obsessive understanding of your customer. I think that's a good point to end the news section on today, but there's some really fascinating stuff going on at the moment. Shall we move on for a bit more of a deeper dive into a couple of marketing subjects? Let's move on to content spotlights. In this part of the show, Pascal and I take a deep dive into a specific item of content. Now, that could be a podcast, it could be a video, could be a blog article, could be just something that we saw as we were walking down the street. So, Pascal, what have you got for us in this week's Content Spotlight?
I've got a TV advert for you,
Oh,
more precisely from the brand Hellmann's, who do
ooh,
the mayonnaise. And give you a bit of context. So, Sunday morning, 2 Sunday mornings ago, we sat with my wife Denise watching Rod's vlog.
ah,
And I think you took us around Selkirk, if memory serves. And halfway through, there's the advert break, which is fine. Although in the past I've said, I wish YouTube would make the adverts relevant to your story. And then comes on an advert that I must confess I've never seen before, which is the Meal Diamond TV advert. Now, a year ago, you may remember Hellmann's did an advert where they repeated, if you like, recreated the famous scene from When Harry Met Sally. And they were in the diner, they're having a sandwich with mayonnaise, and they're recreating the scene as well. And what they have done, which I think is so clever, so funny, I was bursting with laughter all the way through, is literally taking a Neil Diamond Sweet Caroline song into a Meal Diamond sweet sandwich time. And I don't know if you've seen the advert at all, Roger. I think it was very, very much a US campaign, very centric campaign. But you have this environment which is actually quite universal. It could be a pub in England, could be a diner in the US. And out of nowhere, this chap called Mill Diamond, with the words written in his jacket on the back, starts to give a rendition of Sweet Caroline. Do you remember in the 80s when we had Weird Al Yankovic? He used to do all those famous kind of reimagining of the songs. So it's reinvented Sweet Caroline into Sweet Sandwich Time. But when the crowd in the pub or the diner starts to go, so good, so good, so I just literally burst into laughter. And I went into this quest, really. Roger said, what is this? How did I miss this advert? Because I'm obsessed with it now, because I think the play to nostalgia, the fact that they're using a song that everybody knows, the fact that they're using, obviously, a very famous SNL actor called Andy Samberg to create this character with a full backstory and so on and so forth is absolutely genius. And so I wanted to kind of present the advert itself. The link would be in the show notes. I selected, for good measure, an article from Buzzfeed Business to give a bit of a breakdown of the advert. But what I want to kind of point out to you is this advert was released in the US in January of 2026 as part of the Super Bowl game, but it's been lasting for nearly 6 months now because of the song, because of the I suppose how entertaining it is. And I think Hellmann's are doing, it's a blinder in a time where everything's a bit somber when it comes to the news. But one thing that I don't think Hellmann's perhaps have realized is that Sweet Caroline, as the song, has been adopted almost unofficially by, football in the UK. It is the song, unofficially, for the England men's and women's teams, particularly that was launched in the Euro 2020. So suddenly we have a situation where we are weeks away from the World Cup, and I can see suddenly a revival of this advert because people will be singing Sweet Caroline in a different stadia in the US, moving forward. The whole thing is just absolutely fascinating, where what started as a very clever kind of wink-wink advert a la with 𝗓𝗏 𝗏𝗀𝗀 is having 6 months, 8 months worth of life, thanks to essentially that very, very clever use of Sweet Caroline.
This is fascinating. I mean, I've always advocated the very strong link of using pop culture in advertising and marketing. Always have. I always tell a story about in the financial services industry how the industry missed a trick when a character in a soap opera died, and that would have been an opportunity for the industry to make some messages and put them out there. I've had a few conversations with people recently, and there is a bit of a pushback. We don't want to use 80s music because we'll alienate the younger generation. And I'm sitting there thinking, no, you're completely wrong. It's like, what was it on Netflix? Stranger Things. I think in a couple of seasons ago, they brought back the 1980s Kate Bush song, Running Up That Hill. And it went absolutely mega global. And it really, I think it went to #1 again in the charts. The song, yeah. like nearly 40 years since it was originally released. Plus, it brought a whole new audience to Kate Bush, young people who probably never even heard of her. But it absolutely boosted the fortunes of the program as well. And I think there's no problem at all leaning into this sort of pop culture, because yes, it is immediately going to appeal to people like you and I who grew up with this sort of music, but young people are actually really quite enjoying discovering this old stuff. You only have to go onto YouTube now to see all these reaction videos to things like Phil Collins singing In the Air Tonight and Freddie Mercury blowing the crowd away at Live Aid. Young people love nostalgic music. And I think that we should lean into that rather than saying, no, if we do it, we'll alienate our younger viewers.
No, absolutely. And when you watch it again with that kind of marketing, lens on, you'll see how clever it is, because all age groups are represented in some way, shape or form. And the cleverness of the way the lyrics have been changed. It's funny from the moment it starts, and it kind of had that crescendo when the entire pub goes, so good, so good, so good, just for a sandwich with mayonnaise. But for me, it was this idea of, right, that's interesting, because that it's got all the ingredients, from it use the term, of what I've been professing for the last 6 years on the podcast. If you mix communication, audience understanding, and nostalgia, you've got a winner, and Hellmann's have done it again.
Fantastic, fantastic. So I've taken a slightly different approach with my spotlight this week, Pascal. I'm looking at a YouTube video, and the title of the YouTube video is Why AI Agents Are Either the Best or the Worst Thing We've Ever Created. And it's by a lady called Hannah Fry. Have you ever come across Hannah?
You've actually very recently, I would say so, because she's been actually, I didn't know she was the same person that I used to listen on a podcast because I've never seen her. It was always the podcast. And I've used one of her videos recently on the LinkedIn post, but I didn't know about this one, so thank you.
Yeah. No, I mean, I've seen her shorts videos more often than I've seen her long form videos. She always seems to be in the posts, in the shorts post bit of YouTube, and I have watched a few of her shorts. And oh, she's obviously a very articulate mathematician and statistician. And then I'd sort of started watching a few of her long form ones, but this one really did grab my attention because again, it sort of is absolutely and utterly honest about where we are with AI. So obviously you're going to get the shills for AI who just say it's the best thing ever and we should all be using it, and it's going to allow us to all retire, and we'll have to have a national minimum income to allow us to sit around whilst AI does everything. And you need people like this to point out that we're still very early on in the curve. And yes, it's phenomenally useful. And yes, you can find economies of scale. You can improve how you do things, but you can still also make some catastrophically bad decisions as well. And this video shows what can go wrong and what can go right. So in a nutshell, effectively what they're doing is they create an AI agent, which effectively is AI that's allowed to go off and do a task, and it really can do whatever it wants to do. And effectively they set this AI agent the task of building a business selling mugs, China mugs to drink coffee and tea out of. And effectively they just said go. And then they actually looked at what it was doing. Rather than the results, they actually looked at what it was doing. So it started off by sending literally hundreds of thousands of emails to literally anybody who might want to buy a mug. And it even started creating its own press releases and sending them via email to journalists. And of course, this is all unprompted. Basically, they just said, we want you to start this business selling mugs. Off you go. That was literally the prompt. And off it went. Now, one thing to note is it started to run up a fairly sizable bill in terms of, because it was tapping into various different AI companies, and therefore it's incurring charges. And they didn't realize that. And before they knew it, they had hundreds of dollars here and there that they were having to spring to allow this thing to continue. But it started emailing journalists, it started creating events where people could go and buy these mugs. And they were actually really quite frightened by the liberties that it was taking. And in the end, they had to close it down. And even the AI itself admitted that after sending hundreds of thousands of emails and contacting the journalists, etc., it didn't sell a single mug. And that is really quite frightening. But what I do like about this video is she's got quite a engaging personality. She's obviously very, very articulate with numbers. So she understands data, she understands maths, she understands algorithms, and there's no BS with this. And they were looking, it came up with the idea on its own of sending the emails. They were very impressed that it decided to do press releases and contact journalists. But the downside was that they had run up these costs that they weren't expecting, and it didn't sell anything in the end. And it just basically says, yes, you can get these AI agents to do things, but you still need the human being to be in charge of it, to keep monitoring it, to set parameters, to set guidelines, to set restrictions, budgets, for example, before you effectively let it loose. Now, fortunately, in this particular occasion, it didn't actually do anything wrong. and supposedly AI is built not to do stuff wrong, but they did think it came quite close to the bone with some of the things that it was saying. It wasn't exactly lying, but it wasn't exactly being economical with the truth either. So it's about 25 to 30-minute video. Watch it on double speed, and you've got 15 minutes of absolute AI genius here.
Thank you so very much for that. And what is interesting, I'm getting more and more questions now from my clients and some of the support organizations I work with on, is it time for people to talk about AI agents or to adopt them? And say, well, we're not even finished yet with AI assistants. People have not really mastered ChatGPT or Gemini or Perplexity or Claude or all the others, and we're not quite finished to squeeze value from those interactions. But also my point, Roger, is that there is so much valuable learning in understanding and actually being disappointed sometimes about what AI can do for you by having the more manual intervention style of having to write instructions and going back and forth. And I like the way you've used the term liberties, because I think that's what's happening with AI agent. Because ultimately, if we want to be true to what is being kind of offered, it's literally an extra colleague, or it's a partner, or it's an assistant. Now, that makes it a team member, and teams work on the basis of an agreement on what we're going to do next and regular checkpoints. If you and I were to work with a client, we don't just go ahead and do things on their behalf. We check with them that they're happy what we are offering. We probably would, out of professional courtesy, ask them to check the press release for sign off. So all those stages that makes for good human interaction and good actually checks and balances have been completely kind of removed from the build of an AI agent. And I think that's where the danger comes from.
Yeah.
Because it's not really reproducing faithfully what it's like to be a team member. These are mavericks.
Yes, yeah, absolutely. No, well worth watching. I would recommend this, and you may well end up then going down the Hannah Fry rabbit hole, because she really is quite engaging, and it's quite nice to see somebody who has a sort of this sort of background, that mathematical stats-based background, and I found it quite interesting because I've never really been a massively numerate person. I've done maths because I have to, but it's always been the statistical side of the business that has always, and the accountancy side of the business has always driven me insane. And it's really quite nice to see somebody who's so passionate about maths and stats and can actually present it back to you in a way that is actually quite entertaining. Yeah. So Pascal, we've reached that part of the show now where we pay a little bit of a debt. We appreciate the things that happened in the past that allow us to live in the world that we live in today. So let's set the controls of the TARDIS. Let's fire up the flux capacitor. Let's head back in time to this week in history.
In 1928, radio station WGY launches America's first scheduled television broadcast. Viewers watched on experimental 3-inch square 24-line screens and had to adjust 2 dials to keep the blurry picture visible.
In 1950, the first ever race of the Formula One World Drivers' Championship was run at Silverstone in England and won by Giuseppe Farina of Italy in an Alfa Romeo.
And in 1975, Sony launches the Betamax, sparking a major format war with JVC's VHS format. This one was licensed more openly. This helped VHS become the dominant standard, although I didn't know that Betamax remained in production until 2016.
Really? Crikey, were people still buying Betamax up until then? And finally, in 2024, Google unveils the new generative AI features at its annual conference, forcing users to view AI overviews at the top of search results despite them being factually incorrect 60% of the time. Pascal, I'm really stunned about that Betamax continuing to have been in production until 2016. I just thought they disappeared in the mid-80s.
Well, within moments, the same. So what is interesting is a friend of ours went for Betamax, and then a friend of ours went for VHS, and literally my dad was undecided, and he borrowed, the players. Now, for some of our younger viewers and listeners, these were enormous contractions. You needed two people to carry them to the living room. And if we were plugging in, and I think we watched some bizarre British comedy which you can get into to try out the Betamax cassette player, if you will, versus VHS. And I think we settled on VHS more on price than on quality. So when you look into this Betamax and VHS affair, now what is interesting is Betamax is a far better, a far more reliable kind of medium. But what was really clever from JVC's point of view, for all they had invented and owned, if you will, the IP of VHS, they allowed people to license it. So you could be working for Panasonic, you could be working for all manner of competitors, and you could actually create your own VHS-based products. And that seems to have been the deciding factor between, if you like, the dominance of VHS in the market and Betamax becoming just a whisper. Now, why do we have Betamax then all the way till 2016? Because Betamax then was still chosen by, some kind of high-end production companies, maybe the military, maybe, space exploration and so on, because their product, the cassette, if you will, or the bands were far, far superior. We don't realize that to the VHS. But one major drawbacks, the Betamax cassette was only 60 minutes.
Yes.
And that is where VHS cassette, by having a thinner but poorer, band, could stretch all the way to 2 hours and beyond. Because for all of us remember fondly in the 80s and 90s, recording stuff off the telly, you wanted to squeeze as much, programs from your favorite TV series and cartoons onto a cassette as possible.
Yeah, I mean, my father backed VHS, which was pretty good because he usually ended up backing the wrong thing. But I remember the first VHS player we got was probably around about 1982, and one of the first things I recorded was Doctor Who with Peter Davison as the Doctor, and I used to record it and then watch bits of it in the morning before I went to school. I mean, that's just incredible thinking back.
Yeah.
But again,
I'll share a quick story if you allow me. So obviously, people, you try, all of you listeners and viewers, to go back to the 80s when people bought this for the first time. Think of it as buying your first computer and so on. And a friend of ours, so remember, you could actually put a timer on the VHS recorder, and you could record something off the telly. But one of our friends, and I smiled because it's so innocent in a way and so charming, didn't understand that you could switch off your telly to record the program. so bless him. And my dad tried, to explain to him how that worked, but he would leave the TV on overnight, bless him, in his living room, because he thought, well, surely, even though I have the timer and the recording will start, let's say, at 1 o'clock in the morning to capture, this movie, whatever, surely the TV's got to be on. So anyway, that's one of my memories as well of the early adopters.
Yeah, that is a lovely story, isn't it? That is a lovely story. I mean, sticking with TV, it was very interesting about 1928 and the radio station launching America's first scheduled television broadcasts. Recently, I went out to do one of my videos, and I visited a quite charming seaside town in Scotland called Helensburgh, which I've never been to before. Right, yeah. And on the front at Helensburgh, there is a statue of John Logie Baird, who was the actual inventor of television. And I didn't know until I did the video that John Logie Baird was born and was a resident of Helensburgh in Scotland. And there's this lovely statue of him looking out across the Firth of Clyde. And it was an absolutely gorgeous day to do the video. And I actually stood next to this statue and said, do you actually have any conception, or did you ever have any conception of what you really did to change this world? Because you think about the TV screens, the cinema screens, the phone screens, the iPad screens can all be traced back to that first television broadcast that John Logie Baird did. And that was such a pivotal moment in technological history. I was actually really quite moved when I saw that statue, and it's just a shame that it was covered in seagull poo. But anyway, the other one, I think I put in the 2024 Google unveiling generative AI simply because I can't believe that this is 2 years ago, but it feels like it's already history and it's already this week in history because there's been so much development in the subject of AI in such a small amount of time that we're already looking back and thinking, wow, this feels like it would have been more like 10 years ago. So much has been squeezed into 2 years.
Yeah, interestingly, I watched the annual conference every year, day one, because day two and three tend to be more deep dive for developers. And I remember vividly how mixed the reaction was. So they presented the AI overviews,
Yeah.
and they kind of, and normally, with respect to our American friend, there's a lot of clapping and cheering and wooing whenever Google presents anything. But this one, I could tell people thinking, oh, you're kind of messing with the search experience. Or suddenly there was, it wasn't as loud an approval, if you will, as in the past. But where we are, our overviews now is the new internet, and all of us need to get on. And this podcast and you and I, as obviously consultant, help our customers become even more adept at content marketing. This is non-negotiable now.
Fantastic. Thank you, Pascal. Let's bring ourselves way back into the present, but remind ourselves that we do pay a debt to those pioneers, people like John Logie Baird from the past, who allow us to live in this technological marvelous age that we live in now. Let's move on and let's talk about this week's marketing, tech and apps. So, Pascal, what technological marvels have you got for us this week?
So I've been actually invited to do, again, after a long break, video marketing training, Roger, which I'm very, very pleased, which allowed me to subject people to, of course, to lots of anecdotes about films and film trailers and talk about our podcast, but generally, using video content to market your business and make your website work harder for you is at the essence of it. So I've always been on the quest, on the simplest video editing tool for my customers who don't have aspirations really to do much more than something, a quick visual story. And I was surprised to discover that actually our phones have gotten even better at video editing, but the phones companies have not bothered to tell us. Mm-hmm. So I've rediscovered that so if you are an Android user, Samsung phones primarily have something called Samsung Studio, and it is pretty good, Roger. For a simple visual story that you want to show on social media or on your website, and the built-in video editor on your phone is more than adequate. And I think what is nice as well, it is built into the phone. It links to your gallery much, much easier and so on. And that can be, a nicely way. So if you want something super simple, use your phone. And of course, if you're an iPhone user, you could do something reasonably simple with the iPhone photo app. But really, I reckon people want to go back to the old but very, very reliable iMovie. I think people should have on their phone if you want something, swift. Again, you and I have spent the last few years mentioning other apps that can give you more freedom to be super creative. If you want that straightforward editing, keep it simple. Your phone already has it. If you want to work on your laptop more, last episode I mentioned Microsoft Clipchamp, which is a lovely super simple interface to edit kind of movies. Of course, Google have not waited, and done nothing about it. They have launched their own version called Google Vids, VIDS. However, far too much AI interference in my view. So Google, I don't mind if I have the options to use the AI stuff you so proudly have created, but could we also have a simple linear video editing platform that can allow me to get on with my life? Thank you very much.
And by a staggering coincidence, and of course, to everybody watching or listening to the show, Pascal and I never collaborate in advance over the subjects that we choose to talk about in the show. And I have also chosen this week to talk about video editing software and apps, which is fabulous that we've both chosen the same thing to talk about. So I am just in the process of looking at the latest version of DaVinci Resolve, number 21 they're up to now. And remember, for people who aren't aware, unlike things like Adobe Premiere Pro, where you pay a fairly substantial monthly fee to use it, DaVinci Resolve is either completely free, there is a free version, and the free version has got probably more than enough that anybody would ever need to edit something to really high industrial standards. Or you can buy a studio version, which is a couple of £100, and you then get free updates for life. I did that a few years ago, so I got the free update for DaVinci Resolve 21. I mean, this is a really steep learning curve. It's a very, very complicated piece of software, but if you spend the time to learn it, I've never looked back, having swapped over from Adobe Premiere Pro 18 months ago. The thing that is, though, they've introduced some of these AI things now, which I'm beginning to think, would I ever use this? For example, there's a feature where you can actually age the person who's on the screen. So I could put myself on the screen and type in that my age is 55 or whatever it is, but I want you to make me look 30, or I want you to make me look 16, or I want you to make me look like I'm 88. And it then goes through this algorithmic process, and it will edit your face to make you look younger or older. And Pascal, the results are scarily accurate. But I'm sitting there thinking it's a nice little game to play, but I can't think of any use case, certainly for me, doing the vlogs that I do, where I would ever use it, other than maybe to make a joke about something on one particular occasion. But the one feature that they have done in this latest update is absolutely remarkable, and it is AI based. But sometimes I use the DJI action camera as opposed to the Pocket 3. The action camera is effectively DJI's version of the GoPro. Now, the problem with GoPros is that they have a fixed aperture, so you never ever get blur background. You don't get that bokeh effect that you get with a proper movie camera or a more sophisticated camera. And if you want to add a blurred background in something like DaVinci Resolve, up until now you would have to effectively create a mask around yourself and track that mask throughout the entire clip, and then add a blurry background to the bits that aren't you, that you haven't masked out. But what it's done in this one is that you can now just take a piece of footage from something like a GoPro and literally point to the thing in the frame that you want to be in focus, and it will blur everything else out, and you can do it sort of foreground, background, whatever you want, and it works it out itself, so you don't have to do any masking, and it literally just takes like 10 seconds and it looks absolutely fantastic. So that can see definitely using that. But of course, as I've said, DaVinci Resolve, incredibly complicated. I mean, Hollywood uses DaVinci Resolve to color grade movies. Vloggers and people like ourselves, as you've already said, would like something a lot simpler. And at the moment, one of the most popular video editing apps is called VlogNow, from vlognow.me. And it's free as well, in the same way that DaVinci Resolve is free. And I just love the sort of side-by-side comparison. So I've even got a little table here. So the philosophy of VlogNow is you can edit on the train. The philosophy of DaVinci Resolve is you edit in the studio. The learning curve of VlogNow, 10 minutes. The learning curve of DaVinci Resolve, 10 weeks. Color grading on VlogNow. Great filters and basic LUTs, which you just basically add to your video. DaVinci Resolve, it's the industry standard color page editor. You know, Hollywood studios use it. There are millions of buttons, millions of dials. You know, it's like a cockpit's worth of stuff that you can tweak. Hardware, VlogNow is just your phone. DaVinci Resolve, you need a really, really massively high-end computer to run it on. And AI integration, the vlog now has things like auto captions, etc. DaVinci Resolve has all those things like the magic masks and the blurring and now the aging feature, which I don't think I'll ever use. So I just thought that was a nice juxtaposition of the very, very complicated with something nice and simple that everybody can use, which is effectively what you said.
No, that's great. I didn't know about vlognow.me. And forgive me, is it a mobile app as well as a desktop version or just desktop?
No, it is actually a mobile app.
Ah, that's very, very good. That, I mean, in that segment, literally, we've given people 6 options to consider, which is
Absolutely.
And if you add, we should maybe one day. I'm throwing myself into extra work there, but we've covered so much when it comes to video production, planning, and editing. Maybe we should do like a resource for our viewers and listeners. Anyway, let us know, everyone, if that would be helpful, because over the past few years, I've researched, tested so many different options. Maybe a catch-all document would be helpful for all.
Okay, Pascal, so we need to move on from editing films to actually watching films. You've chosen this week's film marketing. Let's move into the film marketing segment right now. Well, Pascal, you chose the film that we are going to discuss today. It's Paul, and it was released in 2011. Let's have a look at the trailer.
Oh my God, I cannot believe we're going to see Area 51.
Hi.
I'm Paul.
I really need your help. I don't know, we're on quite a tight schedule.
What's the matter, Clive?
There is an alien in the kitchenette making bagels and coffee.
Did you want tea?
No, I don't want tea.
Ooh, Marmite.
What if we wake up and find him inserting a probe into our anus?
They don't do that.
Anyone want one of these?
Soil, report.
I'm closing in. I can feel it. In 24 hours, he's going to wish he never set foot on planet Earth.
I want that little green prick dead ASAP.
Hi there.
There's a girl outside.
He cannot be from space. It's not possible.
Are they looking right now?
I got my people primed and ready to pick me up.
So what happens if you get caught?
They're gonna cut out my brain. It's kind of a buzzkill. Let's lighten the mood, shall we? Clive, when did you last get laid?
The individual that you're traveling with is highly dangerous.
It's not dangerous. He's kind of rude.
Oh, what? This is small on my planet.
A couple of times I've seen him scratch his spaceman balls. He showed me things.
He's just talking about his spaceman balls.
Why are we holding hands?
So we look like a family. Hey, we're just a couple of regular guys walking down the street with a small cowboy.
We got company. Give me the alien.
Get your own alien.
I can honestly say this is the most fun I have ever had.
Wanna stand into outer space.
I like this song. Stoke the fire.
Paul.
Just watch.
It's a miracle.
Why would you do that?
I'm not gonna eat a dead bird, am I?
There's some funny stuff going on in that trailer. Now, hands up, I have to say, I've not watched this film all the way through. I must have missed it for some unknown reason when it first came out. I have watched about the first 30 minutes of it very late last night when I got home. So I'm going to rely upon you to sell me the concept of this film.
Oh, do you know what? I'm so excited for you because, when you can, watch it again from the very beginning. But I'm not going to sell it to you. I'm going to allow the marketing to do that for you. And what I'm going to do then, so everybody, I'm going to try as much as I can to not share too much about the movie. If, like Roger, you've not seen it. I myself have seen this movie now 6 or 7 times. And what is incredible, every time I watch it, I notice something different. Do you remember, because this is really Simon Pegg's and Nick Frost's project. This is a US-UK kind of co-production, but they are the writers and the driving force behind it. Do you remember many decades ago when Simon Pegg, Nick Frost and many others did that TV series called Spaced?
Yes.
Where they were living in this flat, and it was like a kind of geek culture heaven, that series, because every other lines was a reference to our favorite, sci-fi and adventure movies.
Absolutely, I remember that.
I want you to imagine that this is spaced kind of energy, warmth, and in a way, kind of charm, maxed with the cleverness of Shaun of the Dead and Hot Fuzz. How does that work for you? Yeah,
that sounds good.
And the marketing relied heavily on description, and sometimes we give a lot of weight to the posters and to the trailers, and they are very important. I will come on to those. But I think sometimes the way you write about it to engage and intrigue an audience can be very, very important. Let me give you the short version that was used, at the time. Two comic book buffs take a road trip to Area 51, where they run into an alien. With federal agents in pursuit, the two inept geeks must quickly find a way to return the alien to its spaceship. That's it. That's the premise. You can imagine, Simon Pegg and Nick Frost pitching this in a room full of, decision makers and financiers. And interestingly, so Denise has been subjected to this film many a time, and she keeps saying, that's you and Roger, whenever she sees the movie. That's you and Roger going to San Diego Comic-Con and having a well of a time, and potentially, because I think that's what they've done so cleverly. It's got a road movie kind of structure. It's got all the sci-fi lore you would imagine, but it's got that element of two geeks go to Comic-Con who would not want to go to San Diego Comic-Con, and their world is turned upside down because they actually meet an alien, and this alien is Paul, and Paul is he's got a short temper, is rude, is a bit egotistical, is a bit fed up with Earth because he's been stuck there for decades, and all he wants to do is get home. And the whole thing is just a love letter to sci-fi movie fans, but actually any form of movie. And the number of reference to Spielberg, to James Cameron, to all those is just, you can literally have a checklist and work through. And I watched it about a week ago, and for the first time ever, after watching it so many times, Roger, I picked up a reference to Jaws as well. It's just absolutely amazing.
So what Denise is actually saying is that we should rename this show Two Inept Geeks in a Marketing Podcast.
Oh, absolutely true. So what is interesting about Paul, and the other thing as well that makes the movie so enjoyable, do you remember when you and I were talking about Pixels many episodes ago, and a few others? The choice of music is also very, very important because they are playing to nostalgia, and the choice of the track, particularly from ELO, which is literally, the band you would associate with sci-fi and geek culture, is just a pure joy. And there are two cameos, one that is voice-only cameo and one that is kind of on screen, that you kind of go, wow, how did they pull this off as well, is very, very important. But if you go back to marketing, because I can't say too much about the movie for obvious reasons, I think that was interesting because this movie is a US-UK co-production. And if you think about the challenge of marketing this one, because it's almost not part of what they call the Cornetto trio of Shaun of the Dead, Hot Fuzz, and At World's End. It's almost like a side for all. We have the same people. So I think for me, if I was a part of the marketing team in 2010-11, I would have said, you've got those very famous UK actors in the UK. You have very famous US actors in the US. Is it going to work? Are we going to be able to pull this off and make sure that on both sides of the Atlantic and beyond, of course, we have the appeal? Interestingly, in the UK, which I didn't know that, this was a Valentine's Day release. The US had to wait an entire month for their own release, which is kind of bizarre. And this is an interesting challenge. Is this truly a date movie when you think about it? It could be, but it's not immediately obvious to me. And just as a little kind of footnote, the movies were released in the spring of 2011, and the DVDs and Blu-ray in the summer of 2011. It was a very, very short and compact run, which may explain why you've missed it, because it wasn't in the movies for very long. It was quickly on the shelves, within 6 months of that, and maybe didn't get the longevity of some of the movies we've spoken about. And then the other marketing challenge I think that they had to contend with was, is it possible that the wow factor of the CGI Paul would detract from actually the quality of the script, the dialogue, and the filmmaking? So as a marketing department, I've got the suspicion that they did wrestle with that. I researched for you the posters, which I've kind of screenshotted for you in the show notes. And I think it'd be interesting to spend a bit of time on the teaser poster, where you have obviously the alien, Paul, and then you've got a descriptor, fugitive, celebrity, slacker, Joker, alien. But can you see the calligraphy that was used for Paul back in the early days of production? It's got that 80s, remember that 80s kind of futuristic cubic style of writing before they moved on to what is now the established, calligraphy. I think it was kind of interesting to observe that.
Yeah, I mean, I love that poster. Fugitive, celebrity, slacker. I mean, it's you can tell even before you even read a lot closer that it's a 𝗓𝗵𝗶𝘀, Nick Frost film, just from that sort of those words, can't you? Oh, of course it is. Of course it is. Of course it is. No, I again, it's simplicity in itself. Just words, a colourful background, and the graphic of the alien. Nothing else. Nothing else. Just simplicity. Absolutely.
And then after that, they introduce, the trio. Paul, obviously the two the characters, and then the strapline for some of the posters. I don't think they used it as strongly as they could have done. Who's up for a close encounter, and then the whole thing. Then you've got the trailers. So for the trailers, there was a teaser trailer released in October 2010. Remember, everyone, this movie was released in Valentine's Day, so 4 months later, give or take. And the trailer was really kind of charming because they had Just the Two of Us song. If memory serves, that's 70s songs, but I could be wrong. Just the Two of Us, and this idea of two guys on the road trip, and then all hell breaks loose, and you kind of have some kind of ideas. But then back to the challenge of US versus UK, who knows who. You had two different trailers. You had the trailer for the UK, cut very, very specifically, and you had the trailer for the US. And interestingly for me, the US trailer reveals so very much of the story. It's almost as though the filmmakers were so worried that people would not get it or would not actually feel like going, that they give away so much. I got a reaction to, well, what's the point of going to see this movie? Because in 2.5 minutes, you've shown me almost all the best bits. And I was thinking, that's very, very strange tactic to deploy.
Yeah, absolutely. No, I mean, again, you can understand, even though it was a co-production with America, it is still a very British feeling film, isn't it? It's British humour, sarcasm, sort of deadbeats, that sort of thing. Now, yeah, there are American stars in it as well, like Jason Bateman. I know that, but I do understand why they went for two trailers. One more tuned to the American audience, whereas the real meat of it would have been the British trailer.
Oh, completely. But it's fascinating to observe them side by side in terms of the cut. Same duration. There's some elements that are very obviously similar, but a different approach altogether. In the US, and because, of course, of YouTube and social media that became international, they also released an R-rated trailer, which was a compilation of all the rudest and funniest, antics, really, of Paul the aliens, and really put into the fore both the incredible. I mean, I know you probably only watched. Did you actually watch? Have they met Paul by the time you stopped watching last night?
Yeah, no, they were in the car with him. So I think he's just been basically picked up.
Yeah,
and they're starting to move. So I've probably missed I haven't got to the best bits of the alien yet, I guess.
I'm chuckling because I know what's coming for you, and I'm just so pleased. But so the CG is just absolutely incredible. I mean, you look at it, go, that is really well done. Very, very well done. But I think that was fair for them to allow the actor Seth Rogen to shine a bit as well, because I don't think that they've done as much as I've seen people doing, and you and I, in other campaigns where they lean hard on the talent, if you will, and they do a spotlight on Simon Pegg and Nick Frost and talk a bit more about what they've been up to on the director, on Seth Rogen. So I think they probably did that as a bit of a catch-all. One thing that I do think is better for the US trailer is that they did use the track "All Over the World" by ELO. Because it's almost like the audio brand of the movie itself, so that was very, very, very nice. So you've got obviously the marketing pack leading to obviously the premiere in London, and yes, there were websites, but again, as they've done with the trailers, 2 different websites. There was a website for the UK called paulthemovie.co.uk, and there is a website for the US, and you're going to understand why they used that, called whatispaul.com. And when you know about how The Matrix was obviously promoted, which is what is The Matrix, and I would recommend people to seek out in the archives of Two Geeks and Marketing podcasts, I review the marketing of The Matrix. You kind of go, yeah, get it, understand, this is all about, sci-fi movies. I've done some screenshots because, of course, sadly, those websites don't exist anymore, Roger. I don't understand. It doesn't cost a lot of money to host websites, but thanks to our friends at the Internet Wayback Machine, I was able to seek out the UK website. You've got the screenshot, and very elegant, using really the elements of the poster. But what was very, very novel 15 years ago were video diaries that are now still can be found on YouTube. Was the US website was very different and actually went through 2 iterations. That was, I would say, pretty plain and inspiring first iteration of the Paul website from the US. I don't know how you feel about it, Roger, but kind of, just a video in the center, some very disorganized kind of icons and buttons, not much more. But once the DVD and Blu-ray were released, they went back at it. And actually, the website looks great. It's got a mapping as well of the journey of our 2 heroes, and it kind of works well. But those websites, sadly, can no longer be found. According to marketing historian as well, there were a blog that the filmmakers ran, which can't be found anywhere, which is very, very sad indeed. And there was a mobile app that Universal UK and worldwide, international, used to promote the movie, but this mobile app can't be found anywhere at all. So these are kind of the findings behind a movie that is now still, the go-to for sci-fi movie lovers and really fans of Simon Pegg and Nick Frost. Surprising that there isn't a sequel to speak of, but maybe that's for the best to let this movie shine. But the heart of the marketing campaign was really each nation, if you will, had their marketing kind of thread. They had their spotlight in their own language, if you will, in their own look and feel. And I think that's a very, very important lesson for all of us in marketing at all times.
Yeah, no, I think as I say, the first half an hour I watched last night definitely established in my head, these are 2 people who I can associate with. Yes, Denise had a bit of a tongue in cheek there, but she's absolutely right. We are the 2 geeks, and it's lovely to see that language and the sort of fish out of water in America. They had the sort of encounter with the thugs in the bar quite at the start.
God, that's so funny.
One of those actors, I don't know what his name is, but he's got sort of a flat top hairstyle. He's much more popular now. He was in Black Mirror. He was the commander of the starship in Black Mirror.
I know exactly what you mean, yeah.
That must have been quite an early role for him. And obviously Jason Bateman went on to Ozark and other things. But yeah, I'm definitely going back to that. I love the ELO song All Over the World. They also, funnily enough, used Don't Bring Me Down as well by ELO, which is in the film. And ironically, just 2 shows or 3 shows back, we reviewed The Running Man, which was the 2025 Stephen King book film, and they used Don't Bring Me Down by ELO in that film as well. So, just like what we were saying about nostalgic music earlier on, it absolutely goes to show that you can add something to a film if you just use a little bit of that sort of nostalgia.
Absolutely. So I can't wait for you to watch the entire movie, and we can talk about it again, privately. But it's one, literally, I've watched it 6-7 times, and like Spaced, the TV series, you keep spotting something you've missed that is a lovely reference to many movies and UFO lore that we're all aware of. And that's to their credit as, writers. And I'm so very pleased that Paul does exist as a movie.
Pascal, thank you so much for doing all the research and coming up with all those posters and all that information. Thank you, everybody, for watching or listening to Two Geeks and a Marketing Podcast, episode 133. If you've got any suggestions for us, seek us out on YouTube, put a comment on the video. We're also on Instagram and LinkedIn as ourselves, not as Two Geeks, but as Roger and Pascal. Let us know which films you'd like us to review in the future. If you've got any marketing and tech that you want us to have a look at, we'd be more than happy to give it a review. So we are out of here, so to speak. So thank you again for watching or listening. Get out there, and until next time, make sure that your marketing is done right. I was Roger Edwards, and he was Pascal Fintoni.